Okay.
Mr. Kip Sorensen, good to see you, man. I'm a little disappointed. I got to say, you chose the dentist over having this conversation a half hour early. That's sad and disappointing. I mean, I take it more as like
Well,
maybe
I
I
had to
need
go
to
to the
improve
dentist
than
because,
you do.
yeah, no, or I thought my face was going to fall off if I didn't go to the dentist. So
What do you have, a cavity or what's your
there's only
problem?
so much my liver could take with Tylenol and ibuprofen. No, I had when you get older and you get your teeth done, eventually they like look at your old teeth work and they're like, yeah, that was done like 40 years ago with like product that's not even good anymore, and we need to like put a crown on that. I'm like, okay, but I don't know about you, man. They put a crown on, and then if I breathe in air or drink cold water, I'm like, oh my goodness, the pain was just
Yeah.
brutal. Oh,
Yeah, I
I
don't deal
can't
with that because I'm not a
stand.
wimp, so that's not something I have to worry
I
about.
I can deal with like a broken arm better than I can deal with a tooth hurting. It's like pain in your head. I don't like it.
Yeah, man. I actually have a tooth right here. That's a fake tooth. I don't have a tooth. Actually, I have a little sliver. My dad doesn't have a tooth there. My sister doesn't have a tooth there. My
Like it's
son,
a genetic
no
thing.
tooth. It's a genetic thing. I have like this
Really?
little weird sliver thing right there.
Yeah.
My son, my oldest son, is looking like maybe he doesn't have a tooth right there. And
No
so it's
way.
just our little white trash, genetic gene built into our built into our code or our DNA. But I
Yeah.
had this done like 30 years ago, like literally 30
Yeah.
years ago, when I was 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's going to last for 5 or 10 years. 30 years on this thing,
30
man.
years
We're going
later. Yeah.
strong. But one day, next week, if I show up and I got this little missing gap right here,
Yeah,
that it just
that's why.
crumbled and fell apart. So,
That's funny. My siblings and I, we all have pretty straight teeth. None of us got braces, but my bottom row, I have a crooked, kind of like this more crooked tooth on that bottom left hand corner, and they do too. Most of
yeah.
my siblings have the same thing. That's
Yeah, man.
really interesting. Hmm.
Yep. Those
On
genetics,
today's
they make you crazy.
podcast, we're going to talk about dysfunctional
Dentistry.
genetics because it's not
Yes.
your fault, right? Life is like your teeth. You had no control over it. And if it sucks, it's not your fault. So don't beat yourself up. Love
And
yourself for the
Well,
way
and the
you
other thing
are.
about it too, Kip, is you can pay somebody else to fix your life for you, which is really
There
cool
you go.
also.
There you go. Which requires money. So just focus on the money so you
Don't
can
think
pay
about
someone to
anything
change your
else and you're
face.
good to go. You're good to go. All right. Well, that was the weirdest
Ah,
intro we've ever had. But you know what? I
for
solicited
sure.
feedback from the Facebook group yesterday, and some of the guys, I say some of the guys, a very few percentage of the guys, for whatever reason, like our banter. So there you go,
Yeah.
guys. Enjoy for your
Yeah.
listening
We're
pleasure.
we're focused on the small percent of you.
Right. We don't worry about the
Hey,
90%.
by the
We worry
way,
about the 10.
shout out for last Friday's field notes. Solid. Like,
Thank you.
in
I don't
fact,
remember what I
I
talked
have
about, but
that
thank you.
podcast recording. No, it was discipline in post pandemic.
Yes.
Kind of
Yes.
how to create discipline, and I was listening to it. And I was like, oh man, I'm just going to give it to my entire team here at the office and say, guys, everyone needs to listen to this because it was solid advice. So not
Yeah,
that you needed me to tell you that, but
no, I did. I did. That's going to completely revolutionize my life now. Yeah, I know a lot of guys struggle with that. Like they really, and I actually struggle with that. I'm a
yeah,
man, and I said it in the podcast, I'm a man of systems, of procedures, and as long as those procedures and those systems are working correctly, I'm good. I'm
yeah,
like the Energizer Bunny, man. I can go all day long, right? But you throw a little wrench into the system, and it wrecks my world. And so I get it. Guys that are struggling right now because they're not going to work or their schedule has changed, or they're working from home and they've got their kids, and just life is weird, man. 2020 is a weird year.
yeah.
I get it. I understand. So that podcast was more for myself, just like anything else. I write these things down. I post them on Instagram or Twitter, wherever we're at. And I'm like, yeah, that message was actually for me. It's like a way to journal the things that I need to hear more than anybody else needs to hear.
Totally. I've done that too. Or like I made my own list and then I'm like, okay, I'll share this on the Facebook group for Order of Band. But it was really just for my own benefit and then me just regurgitating and sharing with someone else.
Which is actually interesting because what I've noticed is, and I've said this before, we've talked about this, is no man is an island, right? So many guys think about, oh, my situation, my wife left, or I'm dealing with this, or whatever.
It's unique.
Fill in the blank.
And
it's not. I'm not trying to diminish what they're going through or the negative experiences or feelings that they might be going through right now. I'm just saying, look, you're not unique. And that's not meant to diminish you. It's just to say that somebody else has gone through this. So it's best to tap into somebody who's already gone through it. And this will tie into something I wanted to address as well. A lot of the guys are like, I just want to hear from regular guys. I'm like, you don't want to hear from regular guys. I had a guy say, I just want to hear from people who are barely getting by. No, you don't want to hear from those individuals.
It's funny they ask that, but a lot of guys don't. Yeah.
They ask it for one of two reasons. All right. The first reason is because they want to be comfortable with their own complacency and their own underperformance. That's reason number one. Reason number two, and I came to this conclusion yesterday, is they want to hear more of the origin story rather than the success story. Right? So they want to hear from these guys who are ultra successful, but they want me to take them back to a time when they weren't and what they were struggling with and what they were dealing with. Because the guys don't relate with ultra success. They relate with struggle because so many men are going through that right now. Yeah. So I actually personally need to do a better job when I'm interviewing these incredible guests to take them back to a time where they weren't so incredible. And I think that will really help these guys who are looking for conversations from quote-unquote regular guys. And by the way, all of our guests are regular guys. I've interviewed over 300 men right now, and I'm telling you, they're all regular guys. They all make mistakes. They have self-esteem and confidence issues. They're going through the same things you're going through. Maybe at a different level, but they're going through the same things. And I just know that because I have my foot in the door. I'm not sitting at the cool kids table yet, but my foot's in the door, and I can kind of look in there and see that these guys are struggling with the same things we are. So don't assume that just because they're ultra successful in one aspect of their life, or they're very good at portraying the positives of their life on social media, that they have everything figured out. They just don't. And that should give you a little hope, saying, okay, well, even though these guys are messed up, they have their own baggage. I'm telling you, all of them have their own baggage. And even though these guys are messed up, they're succeeding in spite of it, which ought to give you some hope that you can do it as well.
Totally. Well, and I don't know about you, but I can think of multiple in my life that I put on some pedestal, and there were, and then I got to know them and became more friends with, and then I was like, oh, they're just normal guys.
Yeah, you're not as impressive
and I think
as
it's the case for everybody. It's just, yeah.
I
was like, Ryan Nickler.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing when these guys come out to the events.
Blue belt. Sorry.
Well, yeah, they come out. That doesn't mean anything. You know that. These guys come out to the event.
I think it means a lot, actually.
I mean, it means a lot to
I don't
me.
downplay that at all.
I do, because it's easy to
look at. It means a lot. I think so.
It does. Like, let me explain myself a little bit in this case, because we don't. It means a lot in its little compartmentalized thing, all right? But it doesn't. I put in a lot of work. I put in a lot of effort, just like you have with your advancements in jiu-jitsu. So I'm not diminishing the work I've done or the work you've done or anybody who's gone through this process has done. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it doesn't make you special. Like, you don't need to put yourself on some pedestal. A lot of people will just gloat in their successes, and you know what? Like, it just doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it just means you were dedicated for a year and a half for me.
Yeah, and if you put yourself too much on the pedestal, what'll happen is you just go to class, some new white
and they'll strip you off that
destroys
pedestal.
You, and then you go, crap.
No, I'll give you a great, you know what? I'll give you a great example. So I get my blue belt last week on, I think it was Monday. I got it. And Wednesday, I fell asleep. I don't know how I did this, but I never take a nap, but I fell asleep at like 4:45, 5 o'clock. And I leave my house at 5:30 to go to the gym. So I set my alarm. I remember I'm like,
train?
I'm just going to do to train, right? And I'm like, I'm going to do 20 minutes. So I set my alarm on my phone. I wake up and I'm like, no, I'm still tired. I'm not going to go. I'm like, wait. It's like, you just got your blue belt yesterday or 2 days ago. You can't miss the first day of training after you get your blue belt. Like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. So I go, but I was tired and I was sluggish and I was feeling like crap. And I'm rolling, and you could tell, and it was showing, and I was like, I feel good about being a blue belt, but I'm getting my butt kicked today. And then Pete Roberts, his son, Keegan Roberts, he's either 17 or he may have just turned 18. Kid's a stud, an absolute stud. White belt. He's been training he's always been in the game a little bit, but he's been training solid for 3 or 4 months, and he's a stud. So he's like, hey, Ryan, let's roll. I'm sorry I wasn't there on Monday. I'm like, all right, let's roll. So we roll, and he gets me in a triangle and just chokes me out. And then I tap, and then he spends the rest of the 5 minutes or whatever on my back. And I was able to successfully defend myself, but I'm like, what is happening right now? I got this 18-year-old kid. Yeah. He's been training solid for 4 months. I just get my blue belt, and he's working me over. I'm like, dude, it was frustrating. It was so frustrating.
And don't assume, I think this happens all the time, but, how's this? I'll admit that I've done this, where a training partner gets their belt, gets promotion, and then I immediately go, let's see if you deserve that. Yeah, that's my mindset training with them.
Dude.
I was like, let's see if you should have got that blue belt or not. Let's train,
So this is no joke what you're saying right now. All right, so here's how the night went down. All right, let me explain this. But guys who maybe, and the guys who train know, but the guys who don't or are considering it, and there's a lot of you, I know there is because you email me and message me. You don't know this. You don't understand this yet. You will. So we roll for half an hour, 40 minutes or so. He's like, all right, everybody line up. So we line up. Calls me up, gives me my promotion, goes through the thing. We spend
You didn't know.
I didn't know.
Okay.
So everybody congratulates me. I go through the line. Everybody's like, sweet, whatever. So we 30 seconds of celebration, right? And then he's like, all right, now line up in rank. And I had to go with each individual until I could either submit or at least sweep or pass some of these guys. And so I go with Pete, who's a black belt, and I go with Ryan Daggett, who's a brown belt, and I go with Jeremy, who's a purple belt, and Dylan, who's a purple, and I go with all of these guys, and I'm like one after the other, and I was just beat down. And I am not joking. I'm like, how in the hell, in a period of 10 minutes, did everybody get so much better? Because they were. And I'm well,
it's because
I get it. They were taking it easy on me before. That's what was happening. I thought they were going 100% before, but I'm like, they weren't even going 100%. How demoralizing is that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. There's so many social, psychological things that happen in jiu-jitsu that it's funny. I was training with a guy 2 weeks ago. I'll share the story and then we'll get into the curve question.
Yeah, because we've been talking, believe it or not, for 45 minutes at this point. We haven't answered a single question.
With a buddy. He's a buddy, right? I respect this guy.
Sure.
And this is the key thing, right? Everything that we're saying, we still love these guys. We still respect these guys. But there's these social constructs and nuances that come into play. Anyhow, we're training, and I'm kind of playing off my back, in a bad position a little bit, kind of focus on a little bit more of escaping and getting out.
Yeah.
And he throws on a straight ankle lock and catches me, right? And I'm like, I have to swallow my pride a little bit and just deal with it. But after he catches me, he does a little, a little celebration. I could see it in him.
He's
and he
excited.
looks up to see if our professors saw. He looked to see if someone was watching him. Awesome. And I was just like, BS, I'm going to destroy you. I was immediately you're not going to use me as your stepping stone to prove how good you are. And then for the next 5 minutes, I just was a complete jerk. I was like not holding back a single ounce. And then I could feel his spirit like crushing and like his self-esteem dwindling. And then I felt, I felt a little guilty afterwards, but it was really, and then afterwards he's like, man, you were trained really good today. And I'm just like, actually, I was just pissed. I was really angry, but it was funny,
That's why it's so good. That's why, okay, so let's tie this into a greater lesson here for the guys. This is why it's so important that you spend time with other men in competitive environments, because you come from a place of mutual respect, right? You respect that guy. He respects you. And yet you're still trying to best one another, which actually improves yourself and it improves him. That's the beauty of it too, is that yes, you're improving yourself, but you're also helping him improve. And so if we do that in competitive environments, man, the sky is the limit. Like it's, I don't know. I just don't think enough guys get this outside of high school competitive sports. Maybe they played in college. I think military service has an element of this for sure. But, outside of that, when's the last time you got with another guy and you competed physically? Whether that's a wrestling match, jiu-jitsu, arm wrestling, running, racing, football, whatever it is. And I just think there's so much to be said for that. And it's something that too many men are missing in their lives. And by the way.
Yeah. What? And that's why.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead. I interrupted you.
I was going to say, I think that's so a lot of guys will think, well, I've got my wife or whatever. Wrong. Your wife certainly serves a purpose and she's certainly instrumental in your growth and your progress, but there's things she can't do. Like my wife will never be able to challenge me the way that Kip, you might be able to. Physically, mentally, emotionally, she just won't. And it's not to diminish her and what she brings to the table. It's just, it's inadequate. Not that it's inadequate. It's not complete. That's probably the better way to say it. It's not complete. You got to have other men in your circle who can challenge you in ways that women can't challenge you. They just can't.
Yeah, totally. And just to drive that thought home, that's why when you're on like even a competitive team and then you have a teammate lose in a big tournament, that's on you. I take that personal.
You should.
Like, to a degree, not just my teammate. I am, because the best way that he has a chance to win in that tournament is to go against me as a better shark. So we obviously didn't prep him, because if he's destroying us in our school or whatever, and then he gets destroyed, that means that we need to level up as teammates, because he's not getting a proper representation of like challenge and skill and everything else. And so
that's right.
To your point, that's what helps us level up in a way that we probably naturally wouldn't, So, and I have to remember that. I have to remember that even in jiu-jitsu, because sometimes you don't want the emotional uncomfortableness to like roll really hard with someone, but you have to remember that when you don't, that doesn't benefit your teammate. And it's no different than in the Iron Council, right? But if we're too soft on our guys or our teams, we're not prepping them in a way that is going to prepare them for something harder in life.
And also the other thing is, I know a lot of guys will say things like, or at least feel to some degree like, I don't want to push him too hard, he might crumble or whatever. And I get that, but like, I got to know if you're going to crumble or if you're going to rise to the occasion. Because if you're going to crumble, I might still want to help to some degree because you're incapable of doing it yourself, but I certainly don't want you in my corner. Like, I don't want you part of my inner circle. Yeah.
And that relationship just shifted, right? Where you're like, okay, this guy is only this to me in my relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I can tell you, even with rolling, like when I roll with a guy, an upper belt or somebody rolls with me and I get my butt kicked or they get their butt kicked and then they come back for more, I'm like, oh, got it. This is the kind of personality you have. And even though you got your butt kicked, you're the kind of guy I want in my corner because you're willing to come back for more. Yeah, and that's grinding. A great weeding out process for people in your life.
Yeah.
All right. Should we get started?
Philosophies of jiu-jitsu. Yeah, let's do it. First questions we have from the Iron Council. To learn more about that exclusive brotherhood, you can go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Mike Garrison How to help other men transition from passive state to the Iron Council type intentional living. I like that. The Iron Council type intentional living versus transitional passive. How do we help men transition?
So he's asking not how to transition, but how to help others transition. Is that what he's saying? Just to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How to help
that's a tough,
other people transition.
Yeah. Look, you start with the lowest hanging fruit because, again, this comes back to the conversation that we had about relatability when guys are like, oh, that guy's so much further down the track. Like, I don't know how to catch up to that guy. The way that you catch up to him is you take one step faster than he took on the very next step. That's it. And then the next step, you got to do it again and again and again and again. And if you put enough of those steps together, then you'll catch up. That's how it works. So we tend to look at somebody who's so far out ahead and think, I'll never catch up to that guy. Right. If he's 500 yards away from you and all you're thinking about is the 500 yards, yeah, you'll probably never catch up. But if you're thinking about the next step, you will. So how do we then frame it in the context of what we're addressing here? The guy who needs assistance might be inspired by you, but doesn't see himself in you. That's actually one of the things that I think we've done very well here with this Order of Man movement is that's not the right word. I was going to say we painted ourselves. That's not what I'm saying. But we've illustrated, that's the better word. We've illustrated to individuals, to men, that we aren't any different than these guys. Okay, I've never said that I'm better than anybody else or that I belong here and you belong. None of that. This is not ego-driven at all. I feel like I'm just like you. In fact, there's things I'm better at than you, and there's things that you're better at than me. I guarantee it. Anybody listening to this podcast, there's things that you are doing that are better than what I'm currently doing. So how do you help a guy who needs that help? You just communicate and illustrate and teach the next step. That's all you do. It's just the next step. So what is the next step? Daily planning. That's the next step. It's plan out your day. I spent time this morning, got my battle planner out. Kip, I'm sure you have yours somewhere close. It's I don't care. I'm not saying like this, like you have to buy this. I'm saying it's daily planning, this or some other system. It's sitting down every single morning and documenting, okay, what do I need to get done today? Write it out. Okay, when am I going to do that? When is it going to fit into my calendar? At what time am I going to concentrate on this? How am I going to plan out my day? And that should take you no more than 15 to 20 minutes. Let him get very, very good at that before you start moving it to the next step. So it's inspiration, and then what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And you continually build upon the foundations that you're illustrating. I do this with my children. I'm not going to teach, for example, my 12-year-old boy who manages our store everything about managing the store on day one, because that would be deflating and it would be overwhelming. I'm just going to teach him one concept, one principle. And then when he gets really good at that, I introduce a new principle and another principle and another principle. And before you know it, say, here's the reins. Take the reins. This is yours now. You run it. But that comes over time, systematically, methodically, and just one step at a time.
And a good definition of those next steps, Ryan, would you say is the Battle Ready program?
Well, the Battle Ready program will illustrate that just perfectly. The problem with trying to get other people to improve is if you're going to use the Battle Ready program, it's like, here, sign up for this thing. And are they going to do it? Some are because they're ready. Yeah. The majority of people aren't going to do that. So if it's somebody who's closer to you, they may initially require a little bit more attention, personal attention, we'll call it.
Yeah. But I think if someone's listening and maybe Battle Ready is too much for someone, they could sign up for Battle Ready and grab aspects of Battle Ready and trends, and give that information.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And they could learn
trying to help along as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't teach what you don't know. So you got to learn it. You've got to apply it. You've got to produce the results from it. And then you can teach others. You have that right to be able to do that for sure.
Okay. All right. Zach Carbon, what are some common pitfalls men may fall into while pursuing sovereignty and how can one avoid or prepare for those pitfalls?
Trying to do everything at once, I think, is a huge pitfall, right? Like, I'm going to wrestle all the control back in my entire life. It's like, dude,
Yeah,
you can't even get out of bed on time.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You know, like if I stepped onto the squat rack right now and tried to squat 500 pounds, it would break my back. Literally, it'd probably break my back. I have no right to do that. I mean, I guess I have the right to do it, but I have no place in doing it. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
But we do that all the time, especially when we look at podcasts like this and we look at high performers. And we're like, okay, I got to get up at 4:30, and then I got to do this battle plan, and then I got to do this, and I got to eat all right food, and then I got to do these workouts, and I got to participate in these hobbies. Whoa. Hold up, dude. Slow down a little bit. It's going to be okay. You know, like Jordan Peterson says, or what's his name? William McRaven, I think, is who talks about making your bed. Just get up and make your bed.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's not good enough. Did you make your bed yesterday? No. Well, then you're better than you were yesterday. And that's pretty good. So I think the biggest mistake a lot of guys make, and so here's what they do when they make this mistake of jumping in head first and like just going after it as fast as they can, is not only do they burn themselves out, we know that, but they also leave a wake of collateral damage in their path. They start to alienate their relationships. They might turn into an a-hole to some degree with other people who are there actually to help them and serve them and want them to win, like your wife and your children. But they become obstacles, something that's keeping you from what you want, and that's a problem. So you've got to take it in stride because you've got other obligations, you've got other commitments and responsibilities that you've signed up for. So you have to take this thing in stride. So again, going back to the previous question, what's the next first step? That's it. I don't want you to think about what's going to happen in the next 100 steps. Just what's better today. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, I want to lose 40 pounds, I commend you for having that desire. Let's actually make it happen by getting out of bed 20 minutes early tomorrow morning and doing 30 sit-ups. And that's it. Chalk it up to a success and a victory, and then tomorrow I want you to do 31 sit-ups and maybe do 5 push-ups. And then the next day, 32 sit-ups, 10 push-ups, and do a band-assisted pull-up. Just take it in stride. And there's risk to that, okay? There's risk to taking it too far, and there's risk to taking it not far enough. I don't know what it is for you. You know what it is, so be careful of BSing yourself too. Like, oh, I'm just taking it easy, just coasting into that's a problem too. We need to push a little bit further than we're comfortable with or we think we can. Otherwise, we're never going to stretch outside of that comfort zone or the growth zone.
Yeah. And that wake of destruction, I think that wake of destruction that we see sometimes, it's when we have spouses, they're like, oh, Ryan's on one of his things again, and they have no confidence that you are actually going to implement or do whatever it is that you keep saying you do, because it's another shiny object. You'll never see it through. Like, that's kind of the telltale sign of the guys that like jump in too much, and then they lack, and to be frank, they lack integrity with themselves and with everyone around them, because it's motivational driven and no discipline. And it really sets a negative precedence for yourself, like how you perceive yourself. Here I am again. I was so hyped up about some diet, and now I'm not doing it, and I failed again. And, it's just like and I get that it's a balance act. And I guess that's the hard part for most people to identify, is like, where is that balance, right? So they don't fail again. But
well, and you bring up the wife scenario. I think you're spot on with that. I think the other issue is that you actually undermine your ability to get her on your side, and that's what you want, right? You want her on your side. Not that she agrees with everything that you say, but she's on your team. Totally. And when you say, I'm going to do this, and you don't do it, for whatever reason, well, you're repelling her a little bit, right? Like, why should she believe? And then these are the same guys who say, oh, I want to start this business, and my wife doesn't believe in me. Well, yeah. Why should she believe in you? Like, have you earned that right? Well, she's my wife. Yeah. And you're her husband.
Do you even make your bed in the morning?
Right.
Can you go to the gym once a day?
Right.
No? Then what makes you think you're going to start a business?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So take it in stride, commit to things that you know you're going to do. You don't need to brag about it to her. She'll start to see it. She'll see the action. And more importantly to her is the result. We experienced this with a lot of guys in the Iron Council, where initially their wives are like, oh, your little boys club, your little man club. You've heard things
whiskey
like that.
Boys. You
whiskey boys. All the old whiskey boys. And so they'll poke. Not like mean-spirited, but they'll poke at it a little bit, right? They'll poke the bear a little
make
bit.
A little fun of it, yeah.
Exactly. And then 2 months down the road, you take a man who's committed, and she's like, what would your whiskey boys think about what you're doing? And it's no longer mockery. It's like, hey, what would your boys think about it? And that's completely different. And that's when you know, okay, she sees the result and she wants me to keep doing the things that are producing the results that are not only improving your life, but improving hers.
Yeah. And you guys would be surprised how often we have spouses that are on board with the Iron Council. Numerous times I've heard of scenarios where guys on the path, he's feeling good about things, decides, hey, I'm not going to be in the IC anymore. I got this. And then all of a sudden he's back. And his wife recognized that he needed to come back. Like it wasn't even on his radar, but his wife's like, something's changed and it's not looking good.
Yeah, because we've had guys, Kip,
like, oh, I'm not in the IC anymore. And they're like, you need to go back to the
join
council.
Yeah. Because I've had, and I think you're alluding to this, but there's guys who won't even tell their wives they left because they know. I can't tell my wife. Yeah. And then she recognizes something. And look, I'm not saying you do this for your wife, okay? Please understand. Well, you're not doing it for your wife. Let me finish this riff on this for a second, and then I want to hear what you have to say. You don't make these changes for other people, ever. I don't care if it's the closest individual to you in your entire life. You don't change for other people. You change for yourself, okay? And other people will be positively impacted by your changes. But that is a result of the changes for yourself. But you don't ever do it for somebody else because it's fleeting, it's external, and it's inferior to doing it for yourself, whether that's your wife or your children or whoever it is that you look up to and want to make feel important or want to feel important from. Do it for yourself. Those other things will fall into place. Go ahead, Ken.
Totally. Well, and I was just going to say, I think that is the most, if I were going to answer the question that Zach had about the most common pitfall, I actually think it's that. I think that is where, and I'm not very good at articulating, and I think you've already alluded to it really well, and maybe there's something to add there. But even in my life, I'll hear what you just said, Ryan, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm doing this for me. But then there's like this a little bit of like this dark, covert, like my fitness is for me, and with this little covert contract of, but my hope is that I'm gonna, come do this, and then she's gonna see me differently. Like it at first glance, it feels like it's true and genuine and really just for myself, but deep down, I'm still looking for this result and acceptance and change in other people and how they perceive me, and it's not truly for my own sovereignty. And so I don't know if there's additional ideas that you have there, but that's a tricky space, or it has been for me, where at first glance I'm like, for sure this is only for me, and then I later realized, like, no, actually I had expectations set that it was going to have these certain results on other people, and it wasn't truly about just me.
I think you're exactly right. And what we do is we look for external validation. But here's the problem. If you don't get your external validation, whatever your expectation of that is, then you're more likely to throw in the towel. I'll give you a silly example so you can see how this works. This morning, I went into the bathroom, took a shower. I trimmed my beard up really nice. Okay. I get into the bathroom. My wife's in there, and I walk in, and I'm like, hey, did you notice my beard? What do you think? And she's like, oh, did you do something to it? I'm like, yeah, I trimmed my beard. Like, doesn't it look nice? And she's like, oh, yeah, it looks nice. I didn't really notice, but it looks nice. And I said, gotcha. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, That's for all the times that you've gone to the hairstylist and you've come back and you've shaved, cut a quarter of an inch off your hair, and then you come back and I failed to acknowledge that you did something with your hair. Now you know how it feels. Of course, we're just playing, right? Like, this wasn't serious. Yeah. So I'm just playing with her. That's a silly example. But this is actually the point. The point is if you're doing it so everybody else can look at your trimmed beard or look at your new belt that you got in jiu-jitsu or look at all the miraculous and wonderful things you're doing and how you've changed and how you've improved your life, and you've built this thing up in your mind like, oh, once I have this, everybody will sing praises to me and throw rose petals on the ground that I walk on before I step on that ground, and that doesn't happen, and that's why you were doing it. You're like, oh, I'm not getting what I want out of this, so I'm done. And you're actually taking away, to your point earlier, some of your sovereignty because you're allowing your decisions to be made by the reaction of others. I'll keep going as long as Kip acknowledges me every once in a while, but if he doesn't, I'm going to stop. Well, you just relinquish some of control over your own life, and I gave it to you voluntarily, hoping you would acknowledge me in some way. It's very, very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Yeah. And when we talk about relationships, whether they're failed marriages or boyfriend and girlfriends, and guys are like jumping on the path to become a better version of them, this is super, super hard, because the initial concept is, I'm going to win her back. I'm doing this, become a better man. And as a result, she's going to desire me more. And those might be true, and that might be okay. But it's not that. That's the point that we're trying to make here, is that shouldn't be the focus. It's okay if that's a natural bystander.
Yeah, I had an early mentor in my life when I was trying to build up my financial planning practice. And I would talk about making money, and I would talk about getting new clients and assets under management and all these things that I wanted. And my mentor said something to me that I actually will never forget. He says, Ryan, just do good work and let the chips fall where they may. It took me years actually to understand that, to like actually see that come to fruition. I'm not so wrapped up in the results anymore. Like, I know inevitably that the results will follow. They just will. They have to. It's an eternal, universal principle that when you do good work and you do it for a sustained period of time, and once you're ready and once you're qualified, you will experience the result that you're after. This is why, guys, the after action review is so crucial, by the way, because now you're reviewing yourself. You're not asking you, for example, Kip, to review me. I'm reviewing myself, and I get to talk about the things that I did well. Like when I wake up and I look at myself in the mirror, like I want to be proud of what I did. Or if I look back at the end of my day and I got my battle planner out and I'm like, all right, well, what did I get done? And I'm checking things off and I'm like, dang, that was a pretty good day. That's something to hang your hat on right there.
You. Yeah.
Right.
You.
For me.
Are validating you. Yeah.
Right. And so people are like, well, I just want to make my kids proud. Look, I can get behind that. I want my kids to be proud of me. But more important than that is making yourself proud of you. If you can be proud of you, then surely your children can be proud of you. Surely your wife, surely the people in your life can be proud of you. But you got to start with you.
And I know, some amazing parents, and their kids aren't proud of them. What then? You're going to kowtow and then do whatever, not what's best for your kid because you're trying to get their acceptance. Like they may never appreciate you until they're in their 20s. So what are you going to do then?
Like, look, I've got a close friend.
All right. Third question.
Well, I was going to say, I've got a close friend. Let me explain this real quick. I've got a close friend who, they're older now. They have a grown son, and that son has gotten into drugs, has gotten into gang activity, has like really gone down a very, very dark path. And these individuals are questioning themselves. Did we do the right thing as parents, and did we do a good job? Like, I don't actually know the answer to that. I assume, just based on my knowledge of them and knowing who they are and what kind of people they are, that the answer is yes, they did a great job. And yet other people have autonomy. They have their agency. They can make their own decisions completely independent of you and anything that you've ever done. So I'm not going to put my hat on what other people can do. That's the external validation I'm talking about. It's dangerous because it's unpredictable and it's not within your control. Heaven forbid my son ever goes down that route, or my daughter ever goes down that route. I don't ever want to be in that situation. But if that were to happen, I would want to be able to say, no, I feel confident knowing that I did everything I could as a father. And that's what I strive to do. All right, third question.
Totally. Yeah, third question. Sorry, I think we have a little bit of a lag, so my apologies if I'm.
It's okay, but no problem. We can work through it.
Over you sometimes. So, all right, David Body, where do you draw the line between being an insecure, crazy person, digging into everything your wife does and not caring what happens and ignoring very odd and suspicious behavior? My wife is both wanting some space to process her own stuff, which is great, and openly admitting to hiding conversations with ex-boyfriends, hiding info out on town plans, changing all passwords, previously known accounts, deleting Ring camera footage of herself at night, and being incredibly protective over her phone. I don't want to be an insecure bitch, but I also want to I don't want to put on the blinders and ignore troubling signs. Sorry for the novel.
I don't know, man. This is such a very sensitive subject. She might be feeling like this because, well, she just wants some level of independence. And so she thinks she's like capturing some of her sovereignty, right? By doing some of this.
Yeah.
Or it might be something else. I don't know. I have no idea. How could you know? Look, the only thing I can say is don't be naive. Bring these issues up in a non-confrontational way. Like, hey, these are some of my concerns. Like, I see this and I see this and I see this. And these are specifically what I'm worried about. Can you tell me about that? And in the meantime, go to work on yourself so that A, you're more attractive to her, and B, she's willing to actually have conversations with you. Because I know in my relationships in the past, I would tell my wife, here's an example, because we do a money meeting every week. And in the past,
that's got to be
I
romantic.
was a dick. Like, I was a complete a-hole. I'd get the budget out and I'd be like, hey, what's this expense? Why did you do that? And how much did you spend here? And I would just be a complete tool to her. Well, let me ask you, do you think that she was real excited about having those money meetings in the future? Do you think she was willing to be open about her spending and her habits and the things that, what did that create and foster the kind of environment that ultimately I want out of my relationship? Of course it didn't. So we go to work on ourselves, and then we make ourselves improve over time, and it's going to take some time. But you prove that she can communicate, and I hate this term more than I hate authenticity, but that it's a safe environment. And I use that specifically for women, by the way, because women generally want to feel safe. I've talked about it over and over and over again. This is part of the reason that men are more inclined to take risks than women. Naturally, women want to feel safe. They want to be protected. And then what that does is that gives them the space to be able to nurture and to love and to create and do all of the wonderful things that women do. But they need the space to do it. And if we can create the space as men, I'm not saying a bubble, but just create this safe environment, then that will allow her to blossom and open up and be receptive and share and communicate in an effective way. But you know what? You might actually be your worst enemy. You might be the one she's afraid of. And I'm not saying that specifically in this scenario. I want you men to wrap your heads around
there's a sense of an attack.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're attacking her and you're going over you're hiding shit and you're ruining our that's not safe,
And she has,
to your point,
then,
I could totally see how that could come across. Yeah.
right. And then she, of course, why wouldn't she be defensive and why wouldn't she be secretive about these things? Now, I don't know. Maybe there's other things going on. I don't know. But that's where I would start because that's the low-hanging fruit. And by the way, it will never serve you poorly. There's no downside to doing this. The only downside, again, I don't know your situation, but the only potential downside is that you uncover some things that you don't want to know about and it really hurts for a while, but then ultimately you're better off for it because you didn't bury your head in the sand. But there's no other downside than that to improving yourself, to creating safe environments for the people that you have a responsibility for, which is your wife, regardless of what's happening. Yeah. Anyways, I feel like I ranted on that one a little bit, but yeah, that's what I think. Take care of yourself, open the lines of communication, make her feel comfortable with that communication, but don't play the whipping boy either, right? Like address it head on. Hey, here's what I'm experiencing. Yeah. I'm not trying to make accusations, but these are some of the concerns that come to mind. So I would really appreciate you walking me through these things. And then when she opens up even to the slightest, okay, all right, let's figure this out. What do we need to do? And then hopefully over time she discloses more and more and more until, you work past these issues.
Yeah. And it might be, I'm just generally saying, I think most of us will assume or create the situation worse in our minds than reality. And so the more you can be upfront and clear in your communication, the better. Because if you don't, you're going to be looking into this even it's going to show up. It may not show up through conversation, but if you don't have the conversation, it's going to eat at you.
It will show up through conversation.
At least for most guys.
It will show up through conversation.
Right, so
they're called cognitive distortions. And I know about this because I dealt with it very, very intensely in my own life when my wife and I went through our separation.
Yeah.
So we separated. I remember
thing.
one time in particular. You're probably a similar experience, right? Where you drive by and you see a car at that driveway and you think, well, who's that? It's like it was the sales guy who's dropping off the furniture. So here's an example I had to show you how crazy we get, guys. We go insane, and these are cognitive distortions. If you don't know what they are, I've done a couple of podcasts on them, or just go Google it, cognitive distortions. So one time I remember vividly, my wife and I going through our separation. She was living with her folks at the time, and I called her, and it went to voicemail. And normally her voicemail was something along the lines of, you've reached the Micklers, we're not here, leave a message, we'll get back with you. Well, she had changed her voicemail, and it said, you've reached Trisha, leave me a message. And so it became, instead of us, it was her. And I went wild, right? I was like, well, what's that? What? I guess it's over. And it's like, whoa, hold up. And I did ask her about it. And she says, oh yeah, I changed it because she was hosting a local car show at the time. And she wanted people to know that instead of the Micklers, it was Trisha Mickler who was handling the car show so they could leave a message. And she was just trying to be more professional for those people while she managed the car show. Okay, but I blew it way out of proportion because I started filling in all these little pieces and making all these little connections that actually were not there. And that is the epitome of a cognitive distortion. And it'll wreck you because it's gut-wrenching. I've been through it. You've been through it, sounds like, Kip, too. Any man who's gone through a similar experience to what we're talking about now has definitely gone through it.
Yeah. And part of that, you can see where those cognitive distortions are related to sovereignty, right? Like in those times of my life, what was my happiness based upon? My acceptance of my wife and my ex-wife at that point, right? It was all about how she perceived me, and so it fed those distortions even more, right? Because it was all about her and how she perceived me. And I was constantly looking for evidence of why she didn't love me. And, and it was just, oh man, it's such a bad cycle, really, really bad place to be.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. All right. Let's take a few more.
Tough times.
Yeah. It's hard. It is hard.
We'll add two more to our two.
2 more. Yeah, let's double it and go to 4. Go ahead. What do you got?
All right, Gavin Meserly. When becoming a peaceful warrior, how can we urge others to let it flow and let it go effectively, namely our wives? Get over it doesn't seem to be working.
He's saying tell her to get over it. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah. He's
Yeah,
saying,
no, that's not going to work.
Telling his wife, hey, get over it. It's not working out well for him.
Calm down. Calm down. Get over it. Yeah, I could see. Really? Really, Gavin? That's not working? Oh, man. That was the advice I had for you, is just to tell her to get over it. Now, here's what you need.
Yeah.
Look, Gavin, you're a solution-oriented individual. So you're looking for bottom line results. Women, generally, are relational-driven beings, people, okay? So she's not interested in the bottom line. She's interested in the relationship. And are you the kind of man who can partner with her in a way that makes her, what did I say earlier? Comfortable, safe, protected. And if you say, get over it, she feels no new sense of protection. She's like, oh, here she came to you. Okay, listen to me.
Yeah.
She comes to you in a vulnerable position because she's explained some situation or some event. She's vulnerable at that point, and she's disclosing it to you. Why would she do that? This is the problem I have with the vulnerability crowd, by the way. It's like, oh, be vulnerable. For the sake of being No. Be vulnerable for a reason, okay? So she's coming to you. She's being vulnerable. Why? She needs to know that you're protecting her. And if she comes to you in a vulnerable position and you say, just get over it, whether you say those words or your actions communicate that, you didn't do anything to secure her vulnerabilities. In fact, you exposed them. You said, well, I'm not here to protect you. Like, just get over it. Like, deal with it on your own.
Yeah. And next time you do that, I'm just going to judge you, right? For not manning up.
So instead, tell me about that. Just tell me about it. Why does that bother you? What's going on? Why do you feel that way? What happened? Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear. Again, they're relational driven beings. They need to know that you're in their corner, that you are kind of their knight, if you will, a little bit, right? That you're there, you're partnered with them, that you want to hear what they have to say, even though, sometimes I get it. Look, we're talking about, I get it. Sometimes you don't want to hear what she has to say because it's like, truly, I've felt that way. Like, I don't care about this. Get over it. But you don't say that because that's not what she's after.
Yeah.
She isn't after being the rock. That's your job. She's after being protected so that she can have the space to nurture, to grow, to do all the things that she does, like I said earlier. And you do that by proving to her that you can be relational with her and that you've created the environment where she can communicate these things to you without being judged and without exposing any vulnerabilities that she may be voluntarily exposed on her own. Cool. So the answer is be a rock so that she doesn't have to. And people say, well, women are capable. Oh, women, I'm going to hear, if people hear me say that, women are capable. I'm not saying they're not capable. That's like me opening the door. I've never opened the door for a woman. And I know people have, but I never have, where a woman said, well, I can get that on my own. Right. I'm not opening the door because I think you're physically incapable of opening it on your own. Right. You get that. You understand that. I can see that you're walking. I can see that your brain is functioning, at least at, I would say 70 to 80%. I can see that your arms are working. So I'm not opening that door because I think you're incapable of doing it. It's just a kind gesture. So I would do that for a guy. If I saw, the Coke guy who's bringing Cokes into the convenience store and he's got a cart and his hands are full, I'm going to open the door. I'm going to say, go ahead. Not because I don't think he's capable, but because that's just a nice gesture. That's it. Don't read into it. But we need to create that environment for the people we care about.
And it's interesting is I feel, and I don't know if this is where Gavin's coming from as well, but I sometimes struggle with realizing that I can can be a peaceful warrior. I can be that rock while also serving someone in a different capacity. That like I don't always have to be get over it guy in all aspects of my life. I can, but then I can still have some empathy in a conversation with someone else, right? And realize that they're not me, and they're not going to have the same exact approach to things, and I can serve them in a different way than who I choose to be or how I show up.
Right. I mean, a great analogy of this, I think it's overused, but it's a great analogy, and that's why it's overused, is because I've got our neighbor, and he's a master carpenter. He's building some bathrooms for the barn right now for us. He's downstairs. I can hear him clanging away. Well, how many tools does he have in his tool belt? He certainly just doesn't have a hammer. Sometimes he's banging the shit out of walls, and that's like what he needs to do. And other times he has a pry bar, or he has a screwdriver, he has a nail gun, or he has whatever else he has in order to accomplish the objective. So it's the same thing here. Kip, there might be times where you and I have a conversation, you're like, I'm just feeling down. I'm like, dude, get over it, toughen up, like drive on.
Because that's the tool that I need, from
exactly.
You. Yeah.
And so somebody else may need a different tool. So that's okay. Put the hammer away for a minute. It doesn't make you less of a man. Just like if my name, Ben, if I said, hey, you can't use that hammer right now because of this, does he feel less manly because of it? Like, no. Does he feel less qualified or capable as a carpenter? No, I think he would actually feel more qualified as a carpenter because he's got more tools that he's proficient with. Because if all he had was a hammer, I'd be like, you're not a carpenter. You're just like a wreck-it guy, like a demolition crew.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I like that analogy because I think sometimes we walk around as though we're the tool and, well, Ryan, I'm a hammer and I deal with all things as a hammer.
Yeah, that's
right?
stupid.
Versus
that's immature.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? I think some guys have that mentality. It's like that's their identity. And it's like, well, this is how I address things. It's like, why? That's not effective. Why not be a little charismatic and go, hey, this person needs this from me, and my children need this type of interaction, and use the appropriate tool for the job versus thinking you're the tool per se.
Well, you know who wraps up their identity in their performance? Children, little babies. Because what do? Every time they don't get what they want, whether they have a poopy diaper or they're hungry or they're mad or they don't want to go, same tool. Cry, scream, throw your hands on the ground, same tool. Their identity is wrapped up in them using that same tool. And, it works occasionally, but as they get older and mature, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to respond to that. And your wife is not responding right now to that because maybe you're being immature. Maybe you're the brute. Like, oh, it's just how I do things. So change, because you're a sentient human being. Evolve, get better. Yeah. You can do it. I know you can.
Yeah, totally. All right, Ed Mather, what's another way to get my kids to do what they need to do other than saying, well, if you don't do this, you don't get that?
I guess it would depend on the context, but I would say you can make some things fun and then tie it to a result. Those are the two tips I'd give. Make it fun.
Yeah, make it fun.
Disguise it in a way. Yeah. Like you can disguise it.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, if I want my boys to clean their room, I'll be like, okay, guys, clean your room and I'll clean mine, and then we'll time each other and see who can get done first. It actually works pretty good. It's a very good strategy. Yeah. Because now it's a competition.
I do the same thing. Mom's at the store. She's going to be back in 30 minutes. Let's see how fast we can get the house clean.
Yeah.
And she'll even pull up early. I get kids outside. They're like distracting her. Hey, Mom, because they're like now set on this whole like game of like pulling this off before she comes into the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's some things that you can do to make it fun. And that's kind of a lighthearted way just to get it done. And, maybe there's a lesson in there. Maybe you're just doing it fun and you're just getting it done. The other thing I would do is tie it to the result. Sometimes kids don't put the effort with the result. They can't make the connection as well as you might be able to. So they don't see the benefit of doing that thing, and you've never communicated the benefit of doing that thing, right?
Yeah. Like a higher purpose, you mean, kind of? Like
yeah, I mean, I think we're kind
of lesson learned, or
the lesson learned, why it's beneficial to do it that way. I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm kind of drawing a blank on that, frankly, right now. But, if it's just a chore, like, why should they do the chore? That's lame.
Especially
I personally don't even want to do
what's
chores.
What's the bigger purpose? Yeah.
Right. It's like me answering emails or doing the podcast editing. I don't want to do that. That sounds miserable. I don't do it anymore. I answer my emails, but I don't do the podcast editing anymore. Cody Lanham does that and does a wonderful job. But like, I don't want to do that. But I did do it because I realized, it's part of the game. It's part of the process. And the result that I am after requires this. So it's the same thing at football practice. When my son's at football practice, he doesn't want to run laps. I remember football practice. I hated practice, but I loved the game. And I loved hitting people, and I loved winning. And so it's your job to make sure you connect those dots so they can see, remember all that practice you put in? This is why. And you start formulating those connections and making those things linked.
I know this isn't Ed's question, but this wise guy by the name of Brian Mitchler.
Hey, we have a new name for you, by the way, just so you know.
I think I saw, what was it? It was Jorgensen or
Chip Jorgensen.
Chip Jorgensen.
You are Chip Jorgensen.
My alter ego.
That's right. So I think Chip and Brian ought to get together in a podcast here very, very soon.
Anyhow, one time you said this, and I thought it was profound, and it's not exactly what Ed's asking, but I want to bring it up nonetheless. Is the importance of understanding why are we wanting our kids to do X, and what's the lesson we want them to learn. And I thought that was profound, because far too often when you brought that up in previous episodes, I realize I am not trying to teach them a lesson, and I just want their room clean. Right. And I'm losing this opportunity for them to learn something. And if I focused on preparing them and letting them learn something for life, then my approach changes. Right. And I may tackle that scenario drastically different. And the book I was sharing with you earlier this week, or I think it was yesterday, one of the quotes out of that book I really loved is, prepare the kid for the road, don't prepare the road for the kid. And a lot of what we're doing as parents should be really about preparing our kid, not preparing the road. But sometimes as parents, at least for me, I'm just like, get shit done, do this stuff, but I'm not thinking about the lesson I want them to learn and how I'm preparing them for life. And if I were, I would be approaching those circumstances probably different than I do most of the time.
Of course. I mean, yeah. And the one thing I do with my oldest is he actually trains jiu-jitsu with me in the mornings, 1 to 2 days a week. And I've gotten the habit over the past several weeks of, at the end of it, and it isn't formal. He doesn't even know it's formal, but I work in a life lesson into, hey, remember when you did that one thing, and then I reverse engineer it kind of back into, like, isn't that kind of interesting? Like, that's kind of like life, right? And then we start talking about these things. Another strategy is my second son. Okay, every other day it's his job to do the dishes, but I help him. Like, I don't need him to do the dishes. We can do the dishes. It's not about the dishes. It's about contributing. It's about that kind of thing, right? So I help him with the dishes. And so I'll rinse him off and he'll put them in the dishwasher. And I just use the opportunity in the moment to just catch up. Like, what are you learning about? What did you do today? What was your favorite part? What was your worst part? Like I ask all those questions, and what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you excited about tonight? Oh, you built that new Lego. How is it? We talk about those things, and the dishes are done immediately. But you have to say it. You can't just let it go. You have to say, oh man, we got through those quick. That's what happens when you're having fun. You're still doing a chore, but you're still having fun. You have to say it, because they won't make that connection by themselves.
I know. It's crazy. Well, even older teenagers, it's like, oh, hey, man, thanks for getting those done without me having to ask. Like, I really appreciate that. Like, that makes me, that's really helpful. And they're like, it doesn't even dawn on them that would be helpful. You're like,
you have to say it.
Yeah.
I think we as fathers generally do a miserable job at that.
Totally.
Is just acknowledge it. You know, my oldest son and I were doing orders this morning, and we cranked him out fast. My son was on top of it. He was killing it. And it would have been very easy for me just to dismiss it and just like, meh. But at the end, I was like, hey, man, like we cranked that out today. That was probably record time today, don't you think? Yeah, that was awesome. I wonder why we went so fast. And then let him come up with some of the answers. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. Good point.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. When it's funny, like my 18-year-old for so long, like I'd give him grief, right? Dude, I shouldn't have to ask you, you know what I mean, to get your stuff done that you're supposed to get done, right? And I would say that all the time. I shouldn't have to ask you. I shouldn't have to ask you. And then I literally remembered this months ago. He like got the dishes done. And I was like, hey, thanks for doing that without me asking. That was like a huge help and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, never asked him again to ever do dishes ever again. And I don't think it's because I was criticizing it. It's because I recognized him for doing something positive that at one time. And that was enough. And I was constantly amazed thereafter. I was like, did he just do that without anyone asking him? I'm like, well, geez, that's surprising. It's so this is funny.
It is funny. And you know what's funny about it is that it's counterintuitive based on what we talked about earlier. Like okay. So you are looking for external validation, right? And we just got done saying, don't look for external validation. But you got to remember, if you're looking for external validation, well, not only that, but if you're looking for it, other people are looking for external validation. Yeah. So I'm telling you, don't seek external validation, knowing full well that other people expect or seek external validation. So if you can I'm not saying take it. I'm saying if you can give it.
Yeah.
Don't
require it, but use it. Yeah.
You can use human psychology as a tool to accomplish more. And because you know about it, you don't fall into it, but that doesn't mean you can't use it to get people, and I use the word influence, to influence them in a way that you want them to be influenced.
Totally.
Use human psychology, but be aware of it so it isn't impactful against you.
Yeah. And there's just like Milo's hierarchy of needs, you know, there's a hierarchy of psychology that eventually in their life, you know, self-awareness and, you know, understanding of oneself and all that kind of stuff will make more sense to them as they get older. You know what I mean? Right. But until then, use it, you know.
But it's not even when you're older. Like, let's go back to what we were talking about with my wife and my beard trim and her hair. Okay. If she comes home from the salon when that was a thing and it's a 1/4 inch shorter and you literally do not see any difference, you still say it. You're like, hey, you got your hair done. It looks great. You're not lying. It still looks good, right? So you tell the truth. Hey, so you got your hair done? Oh, it looks great. I like it. Very nice. Talk later.
Yeah.
That's what she needs. Now she feels a little safer because she didn't have to solicit that from you. You didn't lie to her. You told her it looks nice. Yeah. And you took the initiative and she just feels just that much safer. This is human psychology. Now maybe she's going to do it. Whether she went or not, use it.
Hey, did you shave your face? It looks a lot better.
Did you trim up that mustache that I noticed over the past couple of days?
Looks great, honey.
I really like that. You look very feminine today.
I'll let you know how that goes, guys.
Yeah. Keep us in the loop. If Kip's not here on next week's podcast, he's dead. So
yeah, my body's in a black bag somewhere.
That's right. All right, let's wrap it up. I think we've wasted plenty of time here.
Yeah. So next time we'll have some more questions from the Iron Council. And we often, as you guys know, we answer questions from Facebook as well. To join us on that Facebook group, go to facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And of course, to join us in the Iron Council, really where that accountability sits. And I don't know, you guys already know, it's at the center of this. It's the on the court representation of the Order of Man podcast. How's that? I like that analogy. Not sitting in the bleachers and watching the game.
I like that.
It's getting on
Makes
the
sense.
court and playing the game. And that is the Iron Council. To learn more, orderofman.com/Iron Council. We still have the Order of Man main event coming up later this year. I don't have my notes handy. I'm sorry. Do you have those dates? And do we have any openings?
I thought you came prepared. I'm sorry. I assumed that you would be
didn't.
prepared for No,
My-
I'm just kidding.
my face
it's
is still
October 9th through
throbbing,
the
but-
11th.
What's that?
It's October 9th through the 11th. You can go to orderofman.com/main event to learn more.
Perfect. And then to follow Mr. Mickler and to support the podcast, you can follow him at Ryan Mickler on Instagram and or Twitter. And of course, subscribe to the podcast, share the message. I think Friday Field Notes is kind of like one of my favorite sharing episodes because it's like quick and dirty.
Yeah,
and I think this last Friday Field Note is like applicable to everybody. And so it's a really great applicable message in which we can share the podcast and help support the movement. And I guess we never brought up the latest flavor here.
Sour apple sniper. I have a really hard time saying that, but JP Donnell's signature flavor, sour apple sniper from Origin.
Yeah, and it has the signature right there on the.
I'm drinking
the bottom of the can.
Discipline today, also known as water.
Water. Every single time I drink this, I'm like, Discipline should be water.
It should be water.
I still need to talk to Jocko and tell him to change the name.
Yeah.
Call it Jocko Motivation.
Do what you're supposed to do. Don't ask questions.
You don't need discipline. Anyhow,
right.
It's the best flavor yet. I actually really like this one.
Yeah. So check it out. If you're interested, you can go to originmain.com for that. Use the code ORDER, ORDER. That does two things. It gives you a discount. That's like the best reason. Number two, it lets them know that it still makes sense for them to be friends with me. So do both.
Totally.
All right, guys.
Ryan
We'll let you get going. I do need friends. That's true. All right. We'll be back. When will we be back? Friday for our Friday Field Notes, guys. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.